Hello, my name is Jonathan Hyam, and I am the curator of music and recorded sound at the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts, located at Lincoln Center. And I'm pleased to welcome you to Remote Links, a celebration of the life and work of composer Maryanne Amacher. The New York Public Library is proud to be the home of Amacher's archive, where it will be freely accessible to the public for research and enjoyment. Please enjoy a series of video presentations which will explore Maryanne's rich artistic vision and her inspiring legacy. Thank you to our partners at the Sir Museum of Contemporary Art and Blank Forms for bringing us this engaging set of offerings.
Hello, my name is Bill Dietz. I'm recording today from Florence, Italy.
Hi, my name is Amy Cimini, and I am recording this morning from San Diego, California.
To begin with, we want to extend our warmest thanks to Jonathan Hyam and the entire staff at the New York Public Library. We're extremely excited to begin our hopefully long-term collaboration with the New York Public Library as the new home of the Maryanne Amacher archive.
Thanks, Phil. What we're going to do in this video is each read a short excerpt from Maryanne's rich and very voluminous writings, and then we'll each talk a little bit about sort of what that particular excerpt has meant to each of us. This is a way of both introducing ourselves, but also talking a little bit about our relationships with Amacher's life and work. And then we'll also talk a bit more about the larger video series that this introduction will inaugurate.
The book that we'll be reading from, that Amy's just mentioned, is something that she and I have co-edited. It's the first collection of Amacher's writings. At the time of its publication, most of those writings were unpublished. And we put that collection together with an eye not to be comprehensive, but rather to give the public a sort of peek into the vast sort of unknown terrain of her written work. So the excerpt that I would like to share today comes from a 1988 interview between Maryanne Amacher and Jeffrey Bartone that was done for a radio broadcast out of Olympia, Washington. It's something that I've actually kind of overused in some of my writing about Amacher, but it's something that to this day kind of, I don't know, remains quite strong in my mind. Amacher writes at the very end of this interview, quote, "I think the oddest response I ever got to my music was, and I can't imagine this ever happening in the United States, in Vienna after one of these music for sound joined rooms works. Someone said that they really questioned whether it was such a good thing to have music like this, because maybe you wouldn't need anything else if you could just live in this experience. And maybe that wasn't really so good socially." And then she laughs, end quote. What has struck me for a long time about this quote, in the prospect of a pleasure so strong or so unfamiliar that it becomes seductively incompatible with the world, is something like a way out of the usual dead ends of critical art or conversations about art and politics. As someone educated as a composer and artist, which I was, and someone profoundly dissatisfied with the political position and potential of art worlds, this remark from Amacher gestures toward a kind of work that eludes the elitist, specialist niches of high art by touching us in ways we didn't even know we could be touched, by addressing what Amacher calls elsewhere our quote-unquote unnamed sensibilities. I met Amacher in 2003. I was very much a sort of young, frustrated composer living in Berlin. And I met her in that moment as a kind of fan. And I had then the great luck just a few years later, around 2005, to start working with her and to be in dialogue with her until for the rest of her life through 2009. Basically, anytime she would be in Europe, we would meet up and I would assist, or we would just meet and talk and do whatever. Anyway, since her passing, I've just done basically all I can to just support her work and legacy. In the long interim period leading up to the placement of the Amacher collection at the New York Public Library, I made a preliminary inventory of the more than 100 boxes of materials that were collected. Which includes tapes or, really all manner of audio recording media, tapes, videos, writing, photos, sound equipment, all kinds of personal effects, almost all of which has yet to be shared with the public in any form whatsoever.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Bill. I absolutely love that quotation as well, and I'm so glad that you shared it in this context. I'm also going to read a couple of passages that maybe, like Bill, I may also have overused in my own writing, but that's mostly because I find them so rich and so suggestive. I'm going to share 3 texts, and they're all written in the early 1970s. One will be an excerpt from a kind of manifesto-like essay titled Long Distance Music. And then I'll read 2 other sort of shorter text pieces that sort of begin to sort of put some of the ideas that come together in long distance music into practice. So my excerpt will be slightly longer than what Bill read, but I do hope it sort of brings some of this moment in Amacher's work and thought to life. She writes, "The music we make is confining us to boundaries of one-place situations all the time, receptive to our own structures only as we are making them. Long-distance music is developing occasions where boundaries of one-place situations can begin to vanish. Some involve electronic links, some do not. All involve the interaction between men and sound at distant locations, focused together in the same instance of time, making music together, listening and transmitting out of the place we are in, communicating outside our own structures. New awareness is developed for the places we are in, with links and because of actual acoustic change affecting us, and with occasions like green weather requiring a completely new attitude of mind. Having to extend our listening in this manner extends our receptivity to each other, to the music we are making in the very room we are in, becoming more alive to each other, open to receiving and sharing outside our immediate structure. We no longer sit down to play with the same listening habits. We must stop. Extend our listening out of customary circumstances, outside our own structures, producing change in us and in the music we are making. We all begin to hear each other much better in the place we are in." And so I'll now turn to the text piece titled Green Weather, which in this excerpt, she associates with, quote, "a completely new attitude of mind." So green weather here. "There are no electronic links. We make a special occasion to listen for each other, even though we are at distant points in the world, playing music in our own places, New York, Los Angeles, Rome, Tokyo. The score is based on exchange of energy, using sun and moon as guides. Orienting to distant sun and moon, sending and receiving, playing in early morning East Coast, we are receiving the full sun of Rome. Our music will reflect this, sending to Rome the stillness of early morning. We stop at 8:30 a.m. while West Coast gives the grace before sunrise energy in their music making to Europe now in midday. Europe stops in mid-energy and the next cycle would receive a night to reabsorb. We set aside a period of 8 days to perform green weather in the beginning." So I would really like to spend the next 8 days actually doing that. So there's so much going on in these texts. When Amacher wrote them in the early 1970s, she started at a sort of interesting moment after having completed the 28-hour radio broadcast in Buffalo, New York, which was at that time titled City Links WBFO Buffalo. And then prior to also starting the telematic series City Links in 1973. So these long distance music pieces are sort of imagining how to do long distance listening together without high tech needs or without relying necessarily on institutional support. These are sort of long distance connections created via text and through practices of heightened sensitivity as a kind of transport to another time and place, which will become so important in some of the later pieces related to the excerpt that Bill just read. Also, it's not so much in this essay that it's that music is sort of done always in one place. It's that the idea of one location has become constitutive of what music is in the very first place. And so part of what I hear in these essays is a kind of a call for a full and total rework of what music can be when listening is deferred or referred across multiple sites and attached not only to the ear, but to other embodiments, activities, and sensitivities across distantiated environments. So unlike Bill and probably many readers and viewers, I did not meet Maryanne Amacher during her lifetime, and I instead initially came to know her music through the music of her students. This came through a collaboration with composer and artist Woody Sullender in, I think, 2003 as well, when I was not a frustrated composer, as Bill put it, but a frustrated violist. And I played a piece of Woody's that involved, I'm acting it out right now, involved ensemble playing, but it had a long interlude of his sort of experiment with Amacher's techniques of composing for ear tones or sounds that are generated inside the inner ear. And the experience stopped me in my tracks and raised so many questions for me about what listening and music could even be in the first place. And that generated intense curiosity about Amacher, the person who made it, and about this kind of imagination about what the life of the body and ear could be, as well as the stories, histories, and sort of even worlds that could cohere in their imagination. And I've been grateful and lucky to work with Bill and many of Amacher's friends and colleagues since beginning research in earnest in summer 2012. So I think, as Bill and myself expressed in different ways, we've both had the experience of doing research on Amacher while the ground is still very much shifting under the vast material traces that make up the archive. And we've also been kind of doing the work of imagining her public memory in a way that has to be very provisional and very open-ended. In 2016, we began to develop a program of seminars and listening sessions, at first under the auspices of curatorial platform Blank Forms, that kind of staged our own relationships and engagements with the archive as public facing at a very, very early stage. And this has informed the way in which we edited the selected writings and interviews, and specifically framing it as a selected rather than a collected volume, as a way to emphasize the rigorous but also fragmentary character of the project. But we've also been able to sort of move that ethics to see it at the very center of Amacher's work and working method, so that grasping the unrealized and speculative dimensions at play here has really become the center of research. And I guess one way I would summarize that question is sort of, how do we learn from Amacher how to speculate in the ways that she seems to have done at a very early stage, and then throughout her work in a comprehensive way?
So the care we've taken in putting together these seminars and listening sessions that Amy was just referring to, as well as the way we've organized the selected writings book, also has very much to do with also being very honest about not just how much unprocessed materials there are, but how little we really understand those. And that seems really crucial to remember insofar as Amacher herself was so incredibly careful about questions of presentation, format, institutional framing, etc. And we have hoped then in imagining a celebration of the arrival of these materials at the library and the publication of the book to create this series Remote Links in a format that also respects the ununderstood complexity of her work. Remote Links itself, the series that this video inaugurates, is a series of online episodes that culminate in an online group discussion. The serial format of the whole thing gestures toward Amacher's MIDI sound series, a large work series that she started in the mid-'80s, and the remote online aspect of Remote Links gestures toward her City Links, the kind of works that followed the long distance music text that Amy was reading from before. Like Amacher's grand unrealized media opera Intelligent Life, Remote Links centers the process of reading and experimenting as themselves forms of narrative intensity and shared listening. Each episode of the series to come will feature a guest reading from and then responding to a passage from the selected writings volume, something that's caught their attention personally. And after all of these episodes have aired, guests from the series will come together for a talk hosted online by the MaerzMusik of Contemporary Art. If in reading the selected writings or in watching any of these Remote Links videos, you have any questions or thoughts that you'd like to share, we plan on talking through viewer and reader responses during this concluding group discussion. So please send us your responses to an email that will be shown in a moment. And to conclude this little starting salvo broadcast thing, I also just wanted to sort of reiterate and read a little bit of something that Amy already read, slightly expanded, something as well from the long distance music text, which just really is a sort of banner for this series. Amacher writes, quote, "Becoming more alive to each other, open to receiving and sharing outside our immediate structure. We no longer sit down to play with the same listening habits. We must stop. Extend our listening out of customary circumstances, outside our own structures, producing change in us and in the music we are making. The experience of being in more than one place at one time. Ear is the channel. It activates.